Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the all new Silent Hill podcast. Well, I decided to dig up this series here to dust it off, in other words, as it's been a little bit over a year since my last go around. In fact, it's been around since April 2019, if you could believe it, since the last video I did, official video for this series. The reason I wanted to bring it up again was because I just finished a very nice, lengthy podcast there that I posted, not just on my YouTube channel, the premium service, but also on my Patreon channel. And in it, I went into over so much wonderful, detailed information about why Silent Hill means so much to me. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, all you got to do is just join the subscription services, and then you'll be able to hear all that info. But yeah, it got me motivated. It got me interested to try to find out one more time, just to see how YouTube will react to these Silent Hill videos. The main reason why I stopped them was because YouTube seems to have an adverse reaction to them. Either they don't allow them to get too much views, or they don't get monetized. And for whatever reason, it's just the way it is when it comes to the Silent Hill videos. But never say never. I always try to test things out one more time. And so in this case, I'm going to continue my talk of the Silent Hill monsters, focusing once again on Silent Hill 4, The Room Monsters. If you want to see all my other videos for that, just check out the playlist that I have for the Silent Hill podcast, and then you'll be able to see where I dropped off. But in this case, it's going to focus on a very eerie monster that's encountered there within one of the hospital levels. You're looking at a picture of it now. It may not look like a monster, but it absolutely is, and it has to do with the wheelchair. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info associated with this very creepy encounter. So what was or is this wheelchair? Well, the wheelchair is actually a staple of Silent Hill that has been around for most of the games. In fact, you'll find it easily within parts of the other games, usually in certain levels. But the big difference between those games and the Silent Hill 4 The Room game is the fact that in those other games, they are truly inanimate objects. They are just things that you see within certain parts of the level. Maybe you can inspect them here and there, but that's pretty much it. You don't really do much else with those items afterward. Here, though, the wheelchair truly takes on an enemy status. Something invisible, some type of entity, whether it's a ghost or spirit, a monster, or something else, actually possesses the wheelchair, and it begins attacking you. And that's what makes it very unsettling. The fact that you just can't see what's within the wheelchair itself. You may get a hint of it here or there, more on that here in a minute, but the fact that it's still approaching you and then trying to knock you down and cause you great harm, that's what makes it so unsettling. People already have some kind of adverse reaction already to wheelchairs because the ramifications involving, let's say, being at hospitals or being at sick areas. So in this case, having it from the world of Silent Hill just amplifies that even more so. But first, let's talk about the appearance itself. So the wheelchair is just basically your average looking wheelchair. It does have more of a hinted rustic red associated with it, just like anything else in the world of Silent Hill. If it's metallic, it's going to be rusted, but for otherwise, it looks like just like your average wheelchair. And they are found within various levels there in Silent Hill 4 The Room, mainly in the hospital world, but I believe it's in one other world known as the building world. But yes, they move about within it with great speed, like something is driving them within the wheelchair itself, either in a sporadic fashion, or if they hone in on the player, like they'll actually move about in a straightforward fashion on a collision course until they actually hit the player itself. And they actually do have a good deal of damage. When I was watching the player on the walkthrough move about, he eventually got hit by one of these wheelchairs, and I was surprised by the level of damage that it did. But you know, the fact that this is a big metal object and is moving at a great speed, it looks like the realistic factor in terms of its hit is truly applied here on the mechanics of Silent Hill. So they can be truly dangerous. If you're playing the character of Henry Townsend, you definitely want to avoid these creatures, and I don't think that they can be killed. In other words, like there's anything you can do when it comes to finding and then destroying them or anything like that. I think they actually just still continue to move about, always in a 100% erratic or straightforward fashion, and all you can do is just pretty much try to avoid them altogether. Now, as far as what they consist of, there's this theory apparently that they have some kind of ghosts, something that inhibits or inhabits their area. And the reason that you can sometimes see this link is because there are certain parts there in the hospital world that if you go towards a certain light within the room itself and the wheelchair is in that room, you can kind of see, and it's really eerie, but you can kind of see like a shadow being cast from the wheelchair moving in that typical Silent Hill manner. You know how it's like twitching and erratic and spasming, moving back and forth? That's essentially what you see there. You'll see something being cast from that light onto the ground itself, but if you're staring straight at the wheelchair, you'll see absolutely nothing. To me, that is so creepy. That is so eerie. The fact that there's something there but it isn't is a hallmark of a lot of my other channels, a lot of my other videos when it comes to making and picking suggestions. So here in this case, something supernatural or paranormal or something else that is inhabiting this wheelchair or possessing it, as it apparently seems to be as well, makes it just so creepy. So kudos when it comes to the developers of this game for being able to take something so simple but adding this extra layer to it when it comes to that twitching shadow that just makes it be so bad. And then also they apparently seem to have some type of teleportation manner, because if you don't see one in the room at one point, all of a sudden you will see them afterward. So these wheelchairs not only move about in their own fashion, but they also seem to have their own mind as well. Like they'll follow the player itself, and then when they show up in a room afterward, that just leads even more danger associated with it. But yeah, as far as that shadow and the figure, the one that was sitting within the wheelchair, that definitely makes it seem like that's truly scary. And then as far as their symbolism, there's this notion, since Walter Sullivan is of course one of the main characters within Silent Hill Room the 4, and he has a severe aversion to hospitals, it just makes sense that when he's creating these worlds within Silent Hill, and he's having characters like Henry and Eileen and others within them, then he would have wheelchairs in them as well, like especially when it comes to the world of hospitals. So here he has such a severe distaste for hospitals. The fact that they would not have wheelchairs would be quite surprising. So him including this just seems like it's a natural link between them. Also, the fact that they move about on their own seems to be a sense of helplessness. Like you can't control the wheelchairs, and that's essentially the helplessness that derives from it. And that's where Walter Sullivan helplessness also comes into play. And then when he was also abandoned, he was unable to help himself when it came to his abandonment. So all these wheelchairs and their uncontrollable nature, and the fact that you can't see and do any kind of harm or hurt towards them, all of it just ties into the helplessness that Walter had, and that's why he lent them the supernatural force straight into whatever inhabits the wheelchair itself. Really neat stuff whenever it comes to that type of symbolism. I don't know exactly how it ties into Henry, but at least on the Walter side, that definitely makes more sense. And then as far as some trivia associated with it, while you can't harm, when you can't kill the actual wheelchair, and supposedly you can't harm it, if you shoot it with a revolver, then it'll jump a considerable distance afterward. So that's about the closest damage, if you call it that, when it comes to it. And then there are various different versions of, I guess, wheelchairs that are there, and then there seems to be 6 in total, and apparently they also inhabit several different victims that Walter took whenever he was taking these lives, whenever he was killing people for his sacrifices. And so these potential sacrifices may actually be within the wheelchair itself. So those shadows that I was mentioning earlier, there's a good chance that you're witnessing those same people, those those victims that Walter had as the sacrifices. Very fascinating too. I mean, it's just a small amount of detail, these tiny details that just add so many more layers to the world of Silent Hill. And then also the other thing I wanted to mention is this. Apparently, if you look really, really, really close, you may see a translucent ghostly figure when it comes to a wheelchair. I'll see if I can find any direct link to that, but that's about the closest you can see to something being there. Otherwise, it's the shadow that I was mentioning earlier when it comes to like the type of entity that inhabits that creature. But yeah, if you're in the right spot, if you're in the right circumstance, then that's where you'll be able to see it. And then other areas that it's been featured, obviously it was featured in the film. There's a particular level there where Rose is running through certain parts of a hospital, and you get to see that wheelchair about. And then it's been featured in other games as well, like it was in a mobile game called The Escape, and I've played that game before. I had downloaded that one time on my smartphone while it was still out, and I got a chance to play it. I didn't get as far as encountering the wheelchair, but it is definitely listed there too. But in any case, that's all the information associated with this mysterious encounter, this being, whatever it is known as the wheelchair. If anyone has any more information, anything else might have missed, please post those comments below. What was your encounter like, by the way, when you first saw these wheelchairs? Kind of creepy, no? Kind of scary when it came to the way they attacked and the way they almost seemed to gang up on Henry at certain portions. That's the last thing I wanted to mention too. These wheelchairs definitely know how to tag together, so if you do encounter them, you got to be careful that you're not just seeing one. There's a good chance you'll be seeing others as well. So if anyone has any more information on their encounters with these wheelchairs, let me know. Alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.